On June 28, 1914, a man by the name Gavrilo Princip, a member of the Young Bosnian movement, assassinated the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, setting motion to the events that would quickly escalate into World War I. A society witnessed horror and death on a scale that hadn't been experienced in the so-called Western world for at least a few centuries. An avant-garde art movement in Europe and later New York and Japan began to take shape as a way for artists and audiences to try and cope with the war's collective trauma, rejecting the capitalist aesthetic of the time and aiming to replace the logical nonsense of today with an illogical nonsense. This movement is known as Dadaism, or simply Dada. Anyway, let's talk about cats! Cats. The train wreck of epic proportions that has terrorized all our dreams since the moment we first looked into the abyss and saw the uncanny valley of Tom Hooper's first gone-wrong creatures. If you had any internet presence at all last year, you couldn't escape it. Not the memes, not the reactions of pure terror. And if you've watched it, then congratulations on joining the rest of us and experiencing the brain equivalent of the blue screen of death. If you haven't seen it, perhaps having actively avoided inviting more horror to the shared apocalyptic dystopia we've been living, too bad. I have not been able to stop thinking about this movie since I first saw it, and now I'm here to pass the curse, blessing, to you. Nothing matters anymore, kids. Let's embrace the absurd. Okay, so a lot of people have already thoroughly explained why Andrew Lloyd Webber's passion projects of making a Broadway musical out of T.S. Eliot's poems for children, all of which have little to no connection to one another, was a little But the thing is, the musical format allows for such weird ideas as putting a bunch of singers and dancers in leotard cat costumes and having them sing about each other and or themselves so the appointed boss cat can decide which one of them deserves to die. That's the plot of this thing, for those not in the know. Movie musicals, however, are a completely different medium, and a lot of works on stage does not translate well to the screen and vice versa. For more on that, I recommend Lindsay Ellis's essay linked above. The main thing for us to take from it is that Cats 2019 faced a big challenge from the get-go. Not only is the stage musical sung through, meaning little to no actual spoken dialogue between songs, but most importantly, how the hell does one adapt such a paper-thin premise into a traditional 3-act structure Hollywood film? Well, to paraphrase Alice, by taking what little there was in the musical and pumping it full of steroids. The main connective tissue from the stage production, i.e. who gets chosen at the Jellicle Ball to go to the Heaviside layer, is there, but they make two main additions. First, McCavity, who's not the antagonist of the story, is now the antagonist of the story, Meow! Going around kidnapping the competition with his cat magic to ensure that he's the one who gets chosen to reincarnate. Second, Victoria, who was a non-character in the show and had no songs, is now our main protagonist / audience avatar. At the beginning of the movie, she, very much like us, is violently thrown in the trash as we enter Hooper's strange badass trip from which there is no return. The movie also takes a few brief moments from the musical where Victoria shows compassion for Grisabella, the cat everyone hates because she used to hang out with McCavity, that being another film addition since in the musical they give us no explanation as to why Grace is such an outcast, and it keeps going back to it to try and work in a more overt connection between the two. So when the time comes for Victoria to come and take Grisabella to the Jellicle Ball to perform Memory, it plays as the resolution of a subplot now. The aforementioned magical powers McCavity has in his catnapping of our other cast members were also added in for the film, and I absolutely love them because they make this whole thing weirder and more unhinged. McCavity! Anyway, to better understand my appreciation for cats, we need to go back to the concept of camp. I don't think I properly clarified that, like any other aesthetic, the use of camp can be both intentional and unintentional. Take a movie like Showgirls or Birdemic. A huge part of what makes their status as iconic camp films is the fact that the people behind them were genuinely trying to make something, well, serious.
Really? Damn it!
They weren't made with the agreed upon intention by all creative parts that they were gonna make these over the top so bad it's good movies. They were meant to be taken at face value as honest to God great films. And the fact that they failed so miserably at that is partially why we love them so much.
Must be weird not having anybody come on you.
However, many movies and filmmakers have deliberately incorporated camp as a style to either comment on and/or subvert the mainstream's idea of what is high art, and other times they've used it just because this aesthetic is fun. John Waters' entire filmography falls under that, as does stuff like Rocky Horror, Mamma Mia, and the only good movie ever made, Spice World.
The bridge is going up!
They can't believe it!
Oh my god, I don't believe it!
Like, they were in on the joke. Nobody on and off screen was under the illusion that they were making something that would go on to win the Cannes Festival's Palme d'Or.
Blah blah blah, girl power, feminism, do you know what I mean?
Cats, as it's been well publicized, was part of the Clueless team.
This new retelling of Cats is one of the boldest things that has been done.
It's a massive undertaking.
It's just unlike anything you've ever seen before.
I bring this all up because A, Cats has already become a camp classic in record time, and B, I want to note that camp alone does not a fun movie make. For instance, a lot of gross-out humor falls under the category of camp, but having that be a film's entire foundation with nothing else to say not only misses the point, but is pretty much guaranteed to go horribly, horribly wrong. Like the stage musical before it, Cats 2019's overabundance of camp has quickly turned it into something of a queer favorite, which in itself is interesting considering the film is at the same time more high-key and low-key queer than its source material. The original stage musical has long been considered to be queer as fuck. In my research, I came across a few articles making a parallel between Grisabella's status as a pariah in the show and the ostracization of HIV-positive people even within the queer community, which is not even remotely a stretch considering the musical first opened in 1981, at the beginning of the AIDS epidemic. Then we have Mr. Mistopheles, the gay-coded cat.
Oh, well, I never was it.
And Rum-Tum Tugger, the horny cat, who exudes big Frankenfurter energy. Mr. Mistopheles and Rum-Tum Tugger, by the way, are hinted to have, well, something going on. Whereas Cats 2019, yeah, they scrubbed that right off. It's honestly a little funny to see how they went out of their way to straightwash both of them, because God forbid we lead the audience to think these feline human hybrid horny abominations are having anything but heterosexual intercourse. They kept Mr. Mistopheles' line during the Rum-Tum Tugger number.
The Rum-Tum Tugger is a terrible bore. The Rum-Tum Tugger is a terrible bore.
But now he sings it to Victoria, who's his love interest. Okay. And in that same number, they made sure to add in these moments where the Rum-Tum Tugger expresses to us, the viewers, that he does indeed want to fuck Victoria. Lest anyone looks too much into that big Frankenfurter energy, which, yeah, is still there because it's impossible for it not to be. Especially with Jason Derulo playing it as energetically and cheerfully as he should be. But now I can't help but to feel a little bit neutered. Later, when Macabre catnaps horny Judi Dench cat, instead of the Rum-Tum Tugger suggesting Mr. Mistopheles may magic her back, Monkastrap does it, and Tugs doesn't partake in his song except for the group lines, as if Hooper was afraid to let them make so much as eye contact. So, as it is, they don't really interact in the movie at all. However, all of this no homo they added ended up being kind of ironic considering the changes they made to Victoria's character. Creating a storyline where in the stage musical there was none ended up queering the text in a more overt way than Andrew Lloyd Webber ever did. Victoria is an outcast from birth, immediately rejected by her original family, only to enter a magical, colorful world of possibilities where she finds a group of like-minded individuals who offer her friendship, community, and a sense of belonging. Her new Oscar Beatty song, written by Lloyd Webber and the mind behind 2019's summer hit single Queer Liberation, You Need to Calm Down, explicitly summarizes all that in a very point A to point B way.
All that I wanted was to be wanted.
Our protagonist's journey is a very clear-cut case of chosen family 101.
Born into nothing, might have something.
And I venture to say I'm not the only queer person who caught on to that. In fact, what Victoria's arc reminds me the most is of Dizzy's storyline in The Get Down. The Get Down was a Netflix musical series created by Baz Luhrmann about the origins of hip-hop. The show has that trademark Luhrmann aesthetic and it's filled with queer sensibility. Among its ensemble cast we have Dizzy, played by Jaden Smith, a graffiti artist who goes through a journey of self-discovery that peaks once he meets Thor, who takes him to a secret party where he's introduced to a magical, colorful world of possibilities where he finds a group of like-minded individuals who offer him friendship, community, and a sense of belonging, as he understands and embraces his queerness for the very first time.
What is this place? This? This is where the free people run free, man.
I never knew I'd love this world they let me into.
So in conclusion, what I'm saying is that Cats and the Get Down are the same thing.
Diamonds, furs, and ocean trips. They don't go with tuppence tips. Don't feed me champagne talk when we're eating fish and chips.
So the whole show is made up?
We just do some poppers and say whatever comes to mind.